Hello, everyone, and welcome to ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. Hope you're having a great Monday night watching that Saints versus the Seahawks game. That fourth down measurement reminded me of when the Cowboys played the Raiders and the refs had to take out the index card, and that was one controversial moment. And I was reminded that the spot was very tricky for the refs back then. Of course, the Saints went for it, moved the chains. But man, that Cowboys-Raiders game a few years ago, what was it, 2017, that was a fun game, and I got reminded about that. So welcome to ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. I'm glad you're having a good Monday. Thank you for joining me. And we'll talk about the Cowboys. We'll talk about the help that is on the way for the Dallas Cowboys this week as the Cowboys get back from a bye week. We'll talk about two specific players that I think are flying under the radar from the Minnesota Vikings that we will need to keep an eye on. And of course, as every Monday here on the show, we will have Overreaction Monday because there are a lot of overreactions to take out of these Sunday's slate of games. What is up, Dallas Junk? Thank you for joining the show. The same goes to Stevie Mack, who is reminding you to hit that like button and, of course, share the show as always on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And Stevie Mack says, so we can celebrate Montado Mondays. I forget that that's what we're calling Mondays here on the show, Montado Mondays. We need to do that. And if you're new here, that is because of one of my favorite Mexican foods, which is a montado. And I love montados, and I always will. Shout out to Del Primetime as well, ST in the chat, Val Valentine, and of course, Dallas Junk, who we have already said hi to, and Joshua Davis as well, asking, how is my night? It is great. It is quite a good night for me, and I'm ready to start the week with the right foot here on ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. So, without further ado, now that more of us are here, let's kick this off officially. Let's go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. I'm Mauricio Rodriguez, streaming with you live every Sunday through Thursday night at 8 p.m. Central here on Dallas On Demand Sports Talk Network. With a lot more content coming your way throughout the entire Cowboys season, make sure you check out adcsports.com/Dallas for your Cowboys content, for your Mavericks content. Some articles are up there. This picture is definitely not updated, but some articles are up there on Michael Gallup's potential return and some more stuff by our great Cowboys writers over at ADC Sports. So make sure you check that out. It will be a fun week for the Cowboys because I think we will be getting ready for a fun game this week. I do believe that. And fortunately for the Cowboys, there is a lot to talk about when it comes to players that are coming back from injury. Now, I will hate myself if I don't begin the show by making and filing a public complaint against Bobby Belt's behavior on Twitter, because this Mr. Belt tweeted out a picture, and the tweet said, Dak update, he is wearing 2 boots. Now, when that notification hit my phone, I was dealing with a panic attack when that notification hit my phone. But it turns out it was only a joke from Bobby Belt because Dak Prescott was, I think, signing some autographs with boots on. And I got scared there for a moment, Bobby. I did not appreciate that. Shout out to Bobby Belt. He's a great member of Cowboys Twitter. Invaluable member, I would say. We have a Patriots fan here in the chat, so that is surprising. How about them Patriots? That is right. How about that Jalen Mills getting burnt by CeeDee Lamb? That was a fun game. I agree. They scored about. I'm kidding. I know that Kyle is not a Patriots fan. I know that he's saying that because the Patriots absolutely blew out the Jets over during the weekend. How about them Patriots? Indeed, they woke up. I mean, it's the Jets, of course, but saying that it is the Jets is not fair, because no one had put 50 on them. Now, Bill Belichick still hates New York, though. Bill Belichick still hates New York, and that is my main takeaway from that game. Make sure you'll like the like button, as Rue Glock is saying on YouTube. Thank you, Rue. What is that, says Val Valentine. Also, he was asking about the montados. The montados are basically, they're a Mexican dish, which is usually fast food, but it's basically a flour tortilla with beans, beef, and cheese. But that is one of my favorite. I tweeted out something on MAU NFL, MAU NFL. I will retweet it for you guys tonight so you can check out what is that in specific. No, Cook isn't out, says Tony. Patrick Peterson is talking about the Vikings injuries. It will be very interesting to be on the lookout for this week's injury reports. Not only the injury reports, but also the players that are coming back for the Dallas Cowboys, of course. Cook isn't out yet. I agree with Tony. And Vikings, says Jeb, have a lot of weapons on offense, defense, and it's going to be tested for sure. So let's talk about the Cowboys injuries, by the way. Let's talk about the Cowboys injuries right now, because there are some important updates. And none is more important than Michael Gallup being officially activated for practice this week. That is what the Cowboys are saying. He is cleared to return to practice, and that is big for this Cowboys offense. Now, remember that once he starts practicing, the Cowboys have 21 days. It is a 21-day period in which the Cowboys can place him back on the 53-man roster. If those 21 days go by and the player is not placed on the roster, then he is not able to return this season. However, of course, the expectations are that Michael Gallup should be ready to go very soon. He is not the only player to be that is expected to be activated for practice this week, but also defensive tackle Tresson Hill and also Francis Bernard, linebacker. Interesting to see what the Cowboys will do with Bernard now that he is set to be back, because it might have an impact on the Cowboys' current roster. We know that Luke Gifford has had some moments. He blocked the punt versus the Patriots, but interesting scenario for the Cowboys as these guys try to get back. Now, these are not the only players that are currently in a practice window. Kelvin Joseph, cornerback, was activated for practice last week, and the same for tight end Sean McKeon. So a lot of players that could be back for the Cowboys this weekend. And specifically, Michael Gallup, I think, is the guy that many fans care about, because shout out Cedric Wilson, but Michael Gallup gives the Cowboys offense a whole other dimension, because he's a deep threat. He can line up on the slot. He can line up outside. And we have seen this offense reach a certain elite level, but we have seen only one game from Michael Gallup. So now that the Cowboys offense is clicking, imagine what this team can do with Gallup back on the lineup. And we knew that Dalton Schultz had done a good job last year during Blake Jarwin's absence, but we didn't know that Dalton Schultz was going to take the step that he has taken this season so far. So now that Gallup is set to be back, it will definitely be very cool to see number 19, 88 and 13 on the lineup at the same time with Dalton Schultz, the way that the Cowboys offense has been operating. I just hope that my one wish, now that Michael Gallup is set to be back, is that the Dallas Cowboys do not lower their rate of 12 personnel. Even if Gallup is back, keep using that 12 personnel formations. They have been very successful with them, with 2 tight ends and 2 wide receivers on the field. I hope that Gallup's return doesn't impact their plans on that scheme-wise, because the Cowboys, and we talked about this last week in depth, but the Cowboys are the most efficient team in the NFL when running out of a 12 personnel formation. Not only running, but passing the ball as well. They're the most efficient team. And on first down, they are the second team that uses it the most. So hopefully Michael Gallup's return doesn't reduce that, in my opinion. Dallas Young says Gallup was getting heavily targeted in that Bucs game. Good to have him back. And definitely, he is a player that can do a lot of stuff. And hopefully he secures that back, be it in Dallas or elsewhere, beyond 2021. But hopefully the Cowboys make the most out of him while they have him. As I've been saying on the show, even if he doesn't return in 2022, the Cowboys still have him for half a football season, and the playoffs. So let's hope that number 13 goes out there and really shows up. Del Prime says, crazy Cedric Wilson has been playing very well. This is a good problem to have. And I agree with that. Now the Cowboys know that when the wide receiver number 4 comes into the playing field, they're going to trust him, because that is what Dak Prescott has proven to us time and time again. It doesn't matter if it is not 19 on the back of that jersey or 88 on the back of that jersey. Prescott will trust his receivers like he did versus the Patriots. And this doesn't only include Cedric Wilson, but also Noah Brown. 2 explosive plays versus the Patriots, and just this wide receiver group has turned out to be a pretty deep receiving corps. David C. shout out over in the chat. The same for Stevie Mack. And also Val Valentine was asking if the Cowboys have made any moves on trades. I'm hoping they upgrade our defense. So far, that is not the case. So far, the Cowboys have not made any kind of moves. Hopefully, they are buyers at the deadline. I would love it if they get some defensive help, not only on the defensive backfield, but also on the defensive line. I would love that. And we talked about Melvin Ingram as a possibility on last night's show. I can see us rotating our wide receivers more, says D-Town. Definitely a possibility. The Cowboys know that they don't have to have those 3 wide receivers always on the field. Shout out to Dwayne Wright. Hope all is well. Enjoy your content. Thank you, Dwayne, and welcome to the show. Now, the first question of tonight's episode, now that we're talking about Michael Gallup being back, about Kelvin Joseph potentially, maybe being back, and all of these players that could be back, I'm going to ask you. The Cowboys should be favored by blank points versus the Vikings. What do you think the spread should be in this Cowboys-Vikings game? Last Thursday, we talked about the Cowboys surprisingly being only 2.5 point favorites on this game, even though they're on the road. I think that was a low betting spread. And I'm asking you, what number would you put if you were the odds makers for this game? By how much would you make the Cowboys the favorites? And I'm surprised by this number. Tavi says that actually the Cowboys should be underdogs. And that is the first time that I've read that on tonight's show. So I appreciate that, bringing in some controversy early on the show. Minnesota -2, says Tavis. I respect that. I definitely do. Oh, Cowboys Nation went above and beyond with 17, saying that the Cowboys should be -17 favorites. Chuck Stewart goes with 4. George Brooks is 6. Modelos is 6. 2.5, 5, 7. I think that it should be higher than what it is right now. I like the Cowboys -2.5. I like the Cowboys -2.5. Kelvin Britz is 10, another high point spread. Val Valentin says, now we will win it by 10. D-Town says, I wanted to say 1.5, not 2.5. I will say 3. I will say 3 is the right number. To me, 2.5 is a little bit too low. I think that betting spread should be at 3, and I think it could get there as the week goes on. The Cowboys usually attract a lot of money from the public, and I think they might get to -3 at some point. But I think the Cowboys have the better offense between these two teams. But also, as we discussed last week, I think that the Vikings are a little bit underrated on offense specifically. And the reason why I think they are underrated is that they have some players, and there is a key difference between this year's Vikings and recent year Vikings teams. And we'll get into that in just a few moments. Jeff Newsom says 7. The Vikings offense will keep them in the game. Charles Moore says, I would put them by a touchdown because they are blowing out not so good teams. Now, keep in mind that this is a road game for the Cowboys. If this was at AT&T Stadium, I could see this betting spread go as high as 4. I could see that because usually the market still gives the home field advantage some value. And usually you have some teams that are either 3-point favorites if they're playing at home or 3-point underdogs if they're playing underdogs. That is considered to be somewhat of the base betting spread in the betting world when it comes to the NFL. I could see this game as a shootout in the 30-point range, says Jeb. And the total is quite high, and we'll get into the total in a few moments as well. But here is why I think this year's Vikings are a little bit different than the teams that we have seen in recent years. And there are two players in specific that we might be overlooking a little bit. But the main one is wide receiver KJ Osborne. The Vikings have had good receivers for the past few seasons. Even before Stefon Diggs left the team, they had Stefon Diggs, Adam Thielen, then Diggs left for Buffalo, and then Justin Jefferson entered the picture. And Jefferson was a candidate for Offensive Rookie of the Year in 2020. He's still doing a good job. But now we're talking about a number 3 wide receiver also working in Minnesota. And that is one thing that they have been lacking in recent years. But now they have one on KJ Osborne. Now, KJ usually lines up as a team's slot wide receiver, but he can do a little bit of everything. But 60% of the time, KJ Osborne is going to line up, at least during the first 6 weeks of the season for the Vikings. He has lined up 60% of the time on the slot. The other 40%, he's been on the outside, of course, mixed a little bit, inside, outside. But this guy is doing everything right. He is going for the ball in the air, and he's fighting for it. He's doing a good job running routes. KJ Osborne is one of those players that actually does concern me this game, because Jordan Lewis has been one of the main issues for the Cowboys defense so far. When you take a look at the numbers for this Cowboys defense, they have struggled more about number 3 wide receivers than versus number 1 and number 2 guys. And also they have struggled versus tight ends. But KJ Osborne has been a very interesting player for the Vikings, and I think that is one of the X factors for this game. And usually just about every preview, every article that you pick up on a Vikings game, you will read about Adam Thielen, you will read about Kirk Cousins, Dalvin Cook, and these kind of players. But watch out for KJ Osborne. He had the walk-off touchdown versus the Panthers last 2 weeks ago, but he's a good player. He is a good player. Now, D-Town makes a good point over here in the chat, pointing out that the Vikings have lost versus quality opponents, versus a 1-point loss versus the Cardinals, a 3-point loss to the Bengals that just beat the Ravens and had a second half 28-7 versus Baltimore, and 7-point loss to the Browns. This Vikings squad might be a little bit underrated, and I agree with that. And KJ Osborne might be an X factor in it. Have to walk away for a minute, but if I miss the segment, Dallas needs to watch out for KJ Osborne. Guys, is Nikki. Shout out to Stevie Mack, who apparently knew about where this show was going. Hey, shout out to Stevie Mack. He knew precisely who I was going to talk about. Also, KJ Osborne is in the graphics, so that was a little bit of his sneak peek for those of you who caught it. Ryan Doyle says, Mo, you're right. That Vikings offense can be explosive, and KJ Osborne is very underrated. Now, there's another player on that team that might be a little bit underrated, and this was an odd thing during the Carolina Panthers game. If you watch it closely, you will notice that left tackle was being a rotation for the Vikings. They had, of course, Hill as their starter, and they were rotating him with Christian Darrisaw, the young player, the rookie. 2 drives and 2 drives. So 2 drives were for Hill and 2 drives were for Darrisaw. But I think that after that game, you need to start Darrisaw, and he did a good job. Basically, I think it was about how many snaps did he play? He played a lot of snaps, and he didn't allow a lot of pressures. This guy played very good for the Vikings, and he also looked good in the run game. Here is the number. No, excuse me. Darrisaw had taken 27 snaps, with Hill taking 37 of them. But on those 27, I think that Darrisaw looked way better. Plus, he is a rookie. He is the guy that you want to develop. But I think that Christian Darrisaw is a good left tackle for the Vikings. Of course, as a rookie that is just earning his starting spot, the advantage should go to the Cowboys with Randy Gregory, who's doing a good job rushing the passer. And I like that the Cowboys are using Gregory on both spots. That has been great for the Cowboys in the Marcus Lawrence absence. So we'll take a look at how number 94 lines up versus the Vikings. But I think that will be another key matchup for this game, and a player that we're not talking about enough when it comes to the Vikings. Scotty Oliver says, no, they need to watch out for Randy Gregory. And that is definitely the case. You know that here on ADC Sports Dallas Primetime, we like to keep it interesting. And we could talk about the Cowboys players week in and week out. And we do, of course, because they deserve it. But we also try to always take a look at the opposing team's players. So every time that I talk about the opposing team, it is because I think that is how we become smarter football watchers when the game comes on. So that is why I like to focus on the other team as well. But I fully agree with Scotty. The Vikings need to watch out for Randy Gregory, but that will be a fun matchup to watch this weekend because Christian Darrisaw is earning his role. Minnesota has no tight end. That's a plus, says Tavis. Definitely is, because we've talked about the Cowboys' struggles versus tight ends, and that continued to show up versus the Patriots last weekend. Stevie Mack says, who was the two players? I missed it. Stevie, you were spot on with your comment. The main one was KJ Osborne, number 3 wide receiver for the Vikings. And then the other was Christian Darrisaw, who, in my opinion, earned the starting role for left tackle last weekend versus the Carolina Panthers. And I think that he will be starting. Where in the hell is Bradley and I? We will need him for this game, says Tavis. Bradley and I is a player that we have not seen as much as we would have liked him to play. But that is the case for the young pass rusher. Hopefully DeMarcus Lawrence gets back soon, man. I miss watching number 90, and I think he's the best defensive player in the Cowboys still. And I hopefully he gets back. Thank you to Stevie Mack, who is saying that those were good picks. Thank you to Stevie Mack. Now, one more question before we get to Overreaction Monday. Will the Cowboys Vikings go over or under 54.5? It is a high total for this game, and it is a high total because that Vikings offense is high-powered. And I don't think that the Vikings are elite on offense because they are quite inconsistent. D-Town mentioned the game differential for their losses, and he mentioned that it was a 7-point loss to the Browns, but this was a 14-7 game, so they definitely have had some issues. So that number feels a little bit high, but it is justified. It definitely is. Jeb had said over at Facebook a few minutes ago that he thinks that this could be a shootout in the 30-point range per team. I agree with him. This feels a little bit high score, but I will go with the under. I will go with a just under on this game. I don't have a final prediction yet, but so far, as we sit here on Monday night, I'm leaning towards under because I think that the public will be heavy on that over. And it might be just borderline under. I think the number is quite right, though. Joshua says under. Chuck Stewart says over. D-Town says he's hoping under. That will be another, I think, would favor the Cowboys, hopefully. JK revenge game, says Dallas Young. That is true. That is true. Jaron Kear's revenge game. Dallas Young goes with under as well. David goes with under. Ryan Doyle says the Vikings have no tight end. I guess you haven't been paying attention to Tyler Conklin. He's done a good job. Val Valentine under. Tavis Banks go with the over, and Stevie Mack says going under because the run game might be a big factor. That makes a lot of sense in the sense that the Vikings are a top 5 defense when it comes to the pass, at least according to efficiency stats like Football Outsiders DVOA. So the Cowboys might want to lean towards the run. Ooh, Shock Stewart will be there. Shock Stewart will be representing Cowboys Nation in Minnesota for this game. So shout out to Chuck, and I hope you enjoy the game, man. I hope you enjoy it. I think you will see a good one. I think you will see a very fun one that you will not forget. Hopefully that is the case. Yes, DeMonte Cassie should be playing on this game. Of course, he is dealing with an injury, and he's dealing with the DWI thing, but the expectation is that he will be ready to go. And at least I believe that if at any point DeMonte Cassie is suspended, I think it will be likely for it to be in 2022. That usually the NFL takes a long time putting suspensions on these situations. So maybe that takes a little bit longer than many would expect. Let's get to Overreaction Monday before we say goodbye today. let's get to Overreaction Monday, and there are some good ones. We don't have a Cowboys one because the Cowboys did not play this weekend, but we have some interesting ones. One of them is Bengals are a top 5 contender in the AFC. And you know how this works on ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. You reply fair reaction or overreaction to the statement. Are the Bengals a top 5 contender in the AFC? Is that a fair reaction or an overreaction? The Bengals, man, 41 points versus the Ravens. It was a close game at halftime. But then in the second half, it was a 28-7 whooping against Lamar Jackson's Ravens. Del Prime says overreaction. Dallas John goes with fair, and the chat is feeling fair so far. I will say that it is a fair reaction. I think it is. So far, I don't know how to feel about the Chiefs. I've been slow to get off the Chiefs bandwagon, I will tell you that. But in terms of predictions, not in terms of fandom, of course. But they're not looking okay. And you have the Bills, the Ravens, the Browns, and potentially the Bengals. I think you gotta say it is a fair reaction. Their defense looks legit, and that is the thing that makes me believe that this is a fair reaction. This is not about Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase having a few good games. This is about a defense that is looking like a top 10 unit so far. Cheeto is looking good over there in Cincinnati. They're the real deal. Shout out to Chidobe Awuzie, man. Shout out to Cheeto. He's been doing a good job and one of the best cornerbacks according to PFF's grades. Ryan says their defense has figured things out. It is a fair reaction. Bengals did exactly what I wished we did in free agency, went all in on defense. Definitely did. Val Valentin says fair. People are calling for Tony Pollard to break one on Sunday versus the Vikings. I would love to see that. So fair reaction. I think most answered fair reaction on that question. Now, this is one that comes from Sunday Night Football. Jimmy G looked pretty bad. It was an ugly game to watch, but it's still Kyle Shanahan. It is still Jimmy Garoppolo. So the question is, the San Francisco 49ers will miss the playoffs. Is that a fair reaction or is that an overreaction? They're sitting at 2-4. They have a lot of injuries. They're dealing with a lot of injuries, just like in 2020. So they might struggle a little bit more than expected. The San Francisco 49ers will miss the playoffs. Is that a fair reaction or an overreaction? I'm going to hit the overreaction button on this one. I want to see Jimmy G be a little bit healthier before making the call here. I know that I will be in the minority, and I can see in the chat that I already am in the minority for this answer. But I still want them to figure things out. I still think that Kyle Shanahan is one of the best coaches in the NFL, and he has been able to pull some things off with Jimmy G on their quarterback when he has been healthy. So I want to see that first. Let Jimmy G be healthier for a little while before clicking that fair reaction button, I think. Tough division, says D-Town. That is completely right, though. The division is out of their hands with the Arizona Cardinals playing the way they are. Stevie Mack says fair reaction. Joshua Davis goes with fair. And the Rams, of course. The Rams are also a big-time team. If the 49ers make it to the playoffs, it will be as a wild card. Says no trust in Jimmy G, Del Prime says in the chat. And it is not Jimmy G that I trust. It is Kyle Shanahan with any decent quarterback. Jimmy G is on the verge of getting benched, says D-Town, and that is true. He has a little bit of a chance, though, because Trey Lance is still dealing with an injury. San Francisco is done also, says Val Valentin. So I think that no one agreed with me on this take. So you will have the chance at, killing me when they end up going 2-15 once the season is done. Indeed, the 49ers are not to depth, says Cardi Oliver. Most top at San Francisco in moving anywhere, says Val Valentine. Hey, I will stay on this hill for a little while. Give me 3 weeks, give me 2 more weeks, and I will tell you if I change my mind. I want to see Jimmy G a little bit more before making the call. One more before we go. I didn't copy it the correct way. Give me a moment. The Las Vegas Raiders are 2-0, since John Gruden's emails came out and since he resigned as the Raiders head coach. So the question is, the Raiders are still not really a question, the statement, excuse me. The Raiders are still a playoff team without John Gruden. They have gone 2-0 since he resigned. A lot of people were picking the Broncos when he resigned. A lot of people picked the Eagles last weekend. I didn't, but a lot of people did. The Raiders are still a playoff team without Gruden. Is that a fair reaction or an overreaction? And I think many will agree that it is a fair reaction. They look legit, as Val Valentine is saying in the chat. And their offense is still clicking. And I thought when Gruden first resigned, I thought that it could be it for the Raiders because that offense depended a lot on explosive plays. There is one thing that I loved from their win over the Eagles, other than the fact that it was over the Eagles, but it is that they were able to be patient, throw short passes, intermediate passes, instead of depending on that big play every time. They're doing a good job with their offensive line. They're giving Derek Carr some time, and they have explosive wide receivers. They look like a legit football team. Are they a favorite within the AFC? They're definitely not even in their own division. They might still be the third best team in the division, even with the way that the Chiefs are playing. But hey, fair, they probably got better with Gruden gone, says Stevie Mac. Fair until they play us, says Tavis. And the Raiders will play the Cowboys. What is it? Is that week 12, 1 week after the Cowboys play the Chiefs? D-Town says they haven't made the playoffs for a while, but they look good. Definitely in the hunt. Hope we beat them down Thanksgiving. Ryan Doyle says, I miss the Gruden's Rangers segments they used to do on Monday Night Football pregame. I miss the quarterback show. I forget about the name, but the quarterback show that he had during the NFL draft process. And it is still so impressive to me that when you look back on that Kellen Moore interview with John Gruden, and just about every scouting report that you read on Kellen Moore when he got out of Boise State, we all knew that he was going to be a good coach in the NFL. We did not know how good of a coach he was going to be for the Cowboys right now. But when he got out of Boise State, everyone, literally everyone, praised his football smarts. And that is one of the main reasons why he still the winningest quarterback in college football history? I think he still is, because he played there the 4 years, of course, with the Broncos. And I think he still has that record. If I'm not mistaken, what was it? 56 wins? If it is 56, I really will question why the heck do I know that number. But 56 does not make any sense to me now that I think about it, because he has 4 seasons to play. So 56 is a high number for college football. Was it 46? I don't know why I'm feeling quite confident in it ending with a 6. It's something like that. But Kellen Moore retired from college football as the winningest quarterback in college football history. Again, it has a lot to do with the fact that he stayed there his whole career instead of leaving early for the NFL. Why are we talking about all these other teams? I want to hear about my Cowboys. We talked about the Cowboys for about 25 minutes, but we always have this segment on Monday night. Thank you, Oscar, for tuning in. But we always have this segment, Overreaction Monday. I like to do it, and it gives us a chance to look beyond only the Dallas Cowboys. Stevie Mac says, I keep telling people Derek Carr is a fantasy football sleeper, and no one listens. I don't know how he has been doing on fantasy football, but I trust Stevie Mac's word. Chuck says, does anyone know where the Cowboys stay in Minneapolis? I really don't. But if I do, I will tweet it out, or I will tell you here on the show, Chuck. I will try to find it out, but I don't know. Colin starting these games, says Jeb Newhouse. Well, it has not been made official yet, but he will. Come on. He definitely will. Yes. That is what is going to happen with the Cowboys and La'el Collins. And honestly, that is what should happen. Give me La'el Collins at right tackle right away. Give it to him. So, there you go. Guys, thank you for joining the show tonight. What is the scoreboard on the game? Is it still going, or are we already at halftime? I completely missed out. The Saints are apparently up 10-7 versus the Seahawks. Or did the Seahawks score towards the end? No. All right. 10-7 and the Saints received on the second half. Sorry about that. I stopped watching it. Halftime says Del Prime. So thank you for joining me on tonight's show. I really appreciate it. Cooper says, okay, bro, could we get any help in trades, or do we think could upgrade? Hopefully they do. I don't know that we should bet on the Cowboys pulling the trigger on any trades, because they usually are very conservative on that front. But I hope that they are buyers at the deadline. I would love it if they are. Thank you, David. Thank you, Dallas Jung. Thank you, everyone who supports the show day in and day out. I will see you tomorrow night. It will be Tuesday. It will be a fun game. We'll talk more about that Vikings defense and what has made them good. What has made the Vikings a top 3 pass defense through the first 6 weeks of the season. Thank you for joining me. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you share the show if you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. And make sure you head over to adcsports.com/Dallas for more Cowboys content and Mavericks content, because the NBA is underway. Make sure you check that out. That is adcsports.com/Dallas. Also, follow me on Twitter at MauNFL. That's MAU NFL. And I will see you tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Central. Thank you for joining me. Let's go.